Congratulations, you've signed up for your first marathon. And now the really important part comes next, and that's the training. And so you've got to figure out how you are going to train in the best way possible to get you ready for that start line, healthy and ready to race. So this is just going to be some top things to look for when you are choosing, because I will tell you guys, there are definitely some plans out there that you do not want to choose, or they're just not going to be the right fit for you. So in this, I'm going to tell you what I don't recommend and what I do recommend so that ultimately you can make a really good decision for yourself. All right, so the first thing that you want to do is look at how many weeks the training plan is. So many times this is dictated by when your marathon is and when you are looking for the training plan, which I get that. If you've already signed up and you have only 14 weeks to go, obviously you need a 14-week training plan, but this is not recommended or ideal. So I always recommend making sure that you leave plenty of time between now and when you sign up for your marathon so that you are not strapped for time, so that you really can build that base and make an informed decision for you to do your best in the marathon. So you can type in 10-week marathon training plan, 12-week marathon training plan, and you are definitely going to get options for that. That doesn't mean these are quality options, you guys. Someone may be able to do well with the 12-week marathon training plan if they are super prepared ahead of that and have a big base, but as a beginner, that's probably not the situation that you're in. So I do not recommend choosing a plan that's 15 weeks or less. The minimum I want you to look for is 16 weeks, and I highly recommend going with something more like 18 to 20, which is going to have that longer base phase built in, and it's just nice because then you can have someone telling you what to do. You have that routine, you have that plan put into place before you get into those tougher high mileage weeks of marathon training. Second part of that is you need to then look at how many runs per week are they giving you. So typically, it'll start with the same amount at the beginning that you see at the end, but you might also see a progression where, depending on how long the training plan is, perhaps maybe you start with 3 to 4 days a week, and then you move up to 4 to 5, perhaps 6 later in the end. So those are some things to look for. So I do not recommend any training plans that have you running 3 or less days per week. And yes, these do exist. And what they are built around is not something that I would recommend. That doesn't mean that it can't get you ready to run a marathon. I just don't think it's going to give you the best training to allow you to have the best possible experience for your first marathon. And as a coach, that is what I truly want to have for you, is that you have a really good experience in your first marathon. So you cross that finish line knowing that it was super challenging, but that you want to do it again and you want to do it better the second time around. 4 days will definitely work for some people, especially if you are someone who's been injury prone in the past with your running, or perhaps you're an older master's level runner, or you love doing other types of cross training and you know that you're going to fit in other aerobic cross training maybe 1 to 2 days per week, then 4 days a week of running could certainly work. I typically suggest 5 as the best amount of days for most people. And if you are a more experienced runner, but this is your first marathon, perhaps you can do 6 if you've run 6 days in the past. So maybe starting with 4, moving up to 5, or going 5 all the way across the board would be a great place to start. Okay, the third thing that you want to look at is the amount of weekly mileage that is going to be in that plan at the beginning, as well as what it's going to top out at. So what I don't recommend is choosing a plan where the highest mileage week is 35 miles per week or less. Again, can you run a marathon doing 35 miles per week as your highest mileage week? Yes, I am trying to make recommendations for you to help you have a really, really good experience. Really finding that balance between fully reaching your potential, which you're gonna have time for in other marathon training cycles later, and you being able to do the training and fit it in your life, knowing that this is your very first one. So what I recommend is shooting for about that 40 to 45 mile per week range in those biggest weeks. So that means that likely you're going to have a lot of weeks before that in the 30s range, and that's totally fine. Then you're getting up to 40, and then ultimately having a couple of those weeks up at that highest peak mileage of maybe around 45. The other thing that you really need to think about and look at is what is the weekly mileage for the starting week? Because if you are choosing that plan and let's say it starts you out at 20 miles per week, and you've only been running once per week at maybe 3 or 4 miles, you're not ready to start 20 miles per week. So you really need to choose a plan that you are prepared for, that you say, yes, that is doable mileage for me in the first week. It's, about 10% or less mileage above where I'm at right now. So if you're someone who's consistently been running, 16 to 18 miles a week, you're fine to bump up to that 20. That's around 10% build, and then it will go from there. Okay, the fourth thing that you want to look at is the types of runs that are involved in this training plan. So what I do not recommend for both beginner marathon runners as well as experienced is a plan that has too much speed work involved in it or quality sessions. So for the most part, people are going to be wanting to look for an 80-20 or 90-10 split of having that 80 to 90% in the easy run range and then that 10 to 20% in the harder effort range. However, as a beginner, you actually can do 100% easy running and be very prepared for your marathon. So if it is all easy runs and that is enticing to you and you know that that's what's going to get you to the start line healthy, then don't turn away from that. That's totally fine. And in fact, typically as a beginner marathon runner, you don't really want to have too many quality sessions or maybe have any that are truly defined as speed sessions within that training plan. But I do have a video with 3 different types of workouts that you can do that are considered quality sessions that are great for beginners. So I recommend checking that out. But ultimately, you want to see lots of easy running that's going to build your aerobic base, as well as that long run that's probably going to be every week. You will find plans that have a long run maybe every 10 days, and that can also be something that's really beneficial for people. Again, if you've been injury prone in the past with your running, or you're an older runner, or just because it works out better with your schedule, that can actually work very well for many people. But you want to have a consistent long run that builds within your training plan. So that brings us to number 5, and that is how the mileage builds within the plan. So you're going to want to take this plan you're considering, look at the very first week, look at the last week, and go through it all with a fine-tooth comb. So what I don't recommend is choosing a plan where the mileage starts low and every single week gets more and more and more. You also have to build in recovery weeks in there. So I do recommend looking for a plan that has what are called cutback or recovery weeks built inside of it. And so what this is gonna look like is maybe 2 to 4 weeks of building mileage, and then a week where you cut back quite a bit. And the focus that week is supposed to be on recovery, more rest, more sleep. You very well may be running the same amount of days, but the mileage is cut back and perhaps the quality is cut back as well. So that's something really important that you want to consider when choosing that training plan. Another really important thing is you don't need to be choosing a plan based off of the highest mileage long run. Like if you are specifically looking for something that says 20 miles, I urge you to check out another video I have that talks about how the 20-mile long run is not magic. In fact, for a beginner, you're not necessarily going to hit that 20 miler, and that's okay. So you really want to be looking at the mileage as a whole, how that builds, because you want to consider the fact that it's all of the mileage, guys, not just the long runs. It's really much more important to be getting in the cumulative miles, getting in all of your runs, and not hitting a 20 miler specifically. So I'm not saying a 20 miler is bad, just you want to be looking at these other factors much more involved than just focusing on does this one have a 20 miler or not. So the last thing that I want to say on this, guys, too, is that the more explanations that are given within that marathon training plan, the more likelihood you're probably going to have success with it, because you're going to be doing the runs correctly. So make sure that you find a marathon training plan that also explains how you are supposed to do each of these runs, and you're not just going about this mileage blindly. And it's backed up with information that you can feel very good about, that these are best practices. So I'm gonna go ahead and link my beginner marathon training plan below that I know a lot of people have had success with. The thing I thought I really like about it is you can click on links there that give you videos and articles about how to do each of these runs so that you make sure that you're going about your training correctly. And once you guys decide on a plan, just go with it. Trust the process, stick with it, stick to your routine, and do it. That's the only way you're going to know if the plan really worked once you get to that start line. And that's how you're going to know that you are ready. By implementing the plan, not having a bunch of holes in it, not skipping a bunch of runs. Ultimately, do the work and you will be prepared. All right, guys, thanks for joining me, and I'll catch you in the next video.